I understand what it's like to be disabled, and quite frankly, having drive-in windows for things like banks and drugstores and so on is a very worthwhile thing to do. And I just think that this just is an article that I just am tired of having this town. As I say, I've been a business owner for 45 years. This just continues the anti-business attitude of the town.
Mr. Ferenzi.
Angelo Ferenzi, Precinct 3. I'm also opposed to this article. I'd like to point out, we've talked about Belmont Center, but we have one less bank in Belmont Center, actually. One bank moved out and a dress store moved in. I think we've got to let free market forces. I mean, the reason the banks are here is because people want to frequent them. If we weren't going to those banks, they wouldn't be here. They'd be leaving. All right, as is what happened in Belmont Center. So I think we've got to let the free market forces work here.
Gentleman here and then over there.
William Messenger, Precinct 4. It's a terrible thing for a town to have too many banks, but it's a far more terrible thing for a town to get in the business of having its government decide what businesses are needed and what businesses aren't, how many banks is too many. Just as it would be a terrible thing to have our town government decide how many bike stores or how many sporting goods stores or how many groceries we ought to have. In fact, I think this is fundamentally inconsistent with democracy. So I'm planning to vote against it, and I hope you will too. And as Mr. Ferenzi has said, if there are too many banks built at a certain time, the ones that don't attract enough customers will close, and something else that people do want to shop at will take their place. And things will come back into balance, and we'll all be a lot better off for not having put our government further in the business of telling us what kind of stores we ought to have.
John Robotham, Precinct 2, town meeting member. I'd like to speak in support of the Planning Board and in support of this article. I think there's two very distinct situations here that should be looked at, and it creates two very distinct reasons to vote for this article. In a residential area, banks are pretty unique in the fact that they are going to be operating essentially 24/7, and therefore, just like other activities that might be 24/7 deserve to be looked at in the special permit. As I was walking here today, I walked past Stoneham Bank. They have a lit sign there that says Stoneham Savings Bank, and the only other thing they say underneath it is 24-hour ATM. And that's because they essentially want to be functioning 24/7, and that's what they're going to be doing in a residential neighborhood. So not prohibit them, but special permit. In a commercial area, it's a different situation. Here, we're talking about squeezing out local businesses. People talk about supporting local businesses, but in fact, over 30 of our favorite local businesses signed a petition supporting the Planning Board and saying that they wanted this kind of special permit regulation. So it's not an anti-business, it's a pro-town. Thank you.
Ms. Dunham.
Hi, Thayer Donham, town meeting member, Precinct 5, member of the Belmont Center Planning Group. Our intent when we sort of brought this to the Planning Board was not to prohibit banks, as Sammy has said so clearly. It really was to have a chance to address what we don't like about banks, which is the blank facade on the street and some of the other activities that can occur. And so it really wasn't about banks per se, it was about how they feel as you walk along the street. It was more in tune with the prior sign regulation that was just implemented by town meeting 2 articles ago. So that was really the intent. It was not to prohibit banks.
Mr. Mercier.
Donald Mercier, Precinct 8. One issue that was not covered is the rental income from these properties is what sets the real estate taxes. Any store that is vacant can go to the assessor's office and get an abatement on its tax bill because the revenue is down on that building. It's directly related to the income of the building. That's the leading thing that values these commercial buildings. And I'm opposed to such tight regulations. And I would like to move the question.
No, you can't do that after speech.
Sarah Oaklander, Precinct 8. I wasn't going to get up and talk, but a few moments ago someone spoke and said that this was about our government making decisions on our behalf and threatening the democratic process, and this is exactly not that, because time and time again, we, the townspeople, have spoken up and said, while it's not a consensus opinion, so many of us have said there are simply too many banks in town. We want to see a greater diversity of businesses in our centers. The BedPIC survey was cited. The Belmont Center Planning Group work was cited. So it's about the planning board being responsive to what they're hearing from the townspeople. And it's also about providing a hearing, a place for us to come forward and say, this particular case makes sense and this one doesn't. And letting the governmental process then respond to that. Thank you.
Mr. White.
Joe White, Precinct 4. What I haven't heard, and I waited to hear, is how long does this special permit take to get? And how long is this building going to be empty waiting for this special permit process?
Ms. Fallon.
Takes 4 to 6 months for the special permit process, start to finish.
And if it's denied, an appeal process would take more. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Passrow, Precinct 3. So it's the zoning board that hears the, and is there any kind of guarantee about how they treat the people that come in?
Oh, Mr. Cohen? No, I mean, you know.
I've dealt with them before, they haven't been that nice.
There are criteria.
Yes, but I mean,
You know, there are
mean,
criteria, and
yeah.
and and I think.
I mean, if you want to keep your people happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's largely on a case-by-case basis. So, you know, say, for example, Belmont Center, we get 3 more new banks. Okay, you know, I don't think it's inconceivable for us to say, well, you know.
Yeah,
we
but I
want-
mean, it's a zoning board that gets to decide.
It's the zoning board.
Yeah, so I
not
think
the
we're getting
planning
in
board.
conjecture here.
It's not
so-
us.
Okay.
It's
No,
not
I'm
us,
not saying
yeah.
that. I'm just saying it's a zoning board.
But, you know, and a lot of it would depend on a case-by-case basis. You know, if again, it's abutting a residential neighborhood and there's a drive-through, then there are going to be concerns.
Well, there's a drive-through in Waverly Square that's very dangerous now. I would like to see that, like.
Well, I think we're
Another topic.
straying beyond
But
the
anyway,
question. Mr.
okay.
Scally?
Joe Scally, Precinct 2. Move the question.
Question's been moved. It's not debatable. It requires 2/3. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. It passes. It's approved by more than 2/3. We will now vote on the motion. This is a 2/3 vote. We're voting on the content here, obviously. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Does not achieve 2/3. The motion is defeated. Article, did I hear him? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Is somebody? Yeah, is somebody questioning the vote? Oh, all right. Well, if somebody's questioning, yeah, if somebody's questioning the vote, we need. I'm sorry?
Remind them that it needs 2/3. It doesn't even go to
Yeah, I mean, it does need 2/3. But you're still quite, fine, then we need a standing vote. If somebody's questioning the vote by our rules, we need a standing vote. So tellers, all those in favor of the motion, please stand. Stay out of it.
Because you're very loud. Tim, you're really loud. But not twice. Twice or 3 times, 4 times. Last week, got to count at least once during the year.
This is Mike's first time. I've had so much trouble before. I can't imagine it being a bank. I've been to but they've come just to
I charge too much rent for it. I can't make it. My lease is still, I still have a lease that they're paying on that I can't pay for, then vacate the property. It'd be nice if people move fast.
Pardon me. All right, please be seated. And if those who are opposed to the motion will please rise.
It's a majority, but not.
Not me. Who?
Left.
Not having an apartment, I can't do 26.
26, okay. 26, right?
I know, I sent it.
I'd like to see greatest things. But, you know, there should be a higher rent. They're solvent businesses. They're not going to be. Bank of America.
All right, we have the final vote on Article 23. Yes, 91, no, 89. Since it needs a 2/3, the motion fails. We have one final motion. There's been a lot of work, a revised motion, a lot of work on this issue, and I believe there's been broad agreement achieved. I'm not trying to steer town meeting, but I guess my sense would be to persevere, but if you tell me we shouldn't, yes? All right. why don't we'll read the motion. Let's read the motion and begin discussion. And well, I will. All right. Let's do it this. Let's do it officially. I will entertain a motion to adjourn until Monday, and let's decide how the majority feels.
So moved.
Second. It's open to discussion. Is it debatable?
He said the motion.
Be specific. No, adjourn is not debatable.
Joanna Hilgenberg, Precinct 6. I move that discussion of this warrant article be postponed until Monday.
Why don't you say, I move that the...
I move that
that the meeting be adjourned
the
until
meeting be
Monday at
adjourned
7:30.
until Monday
At 7:30
at
in
7:30
this place.
in this place, and at which time we will discuss Article 20, which will be far more fair to the residents of this area than trying to establish a discussion at 11:15 at night when most of us are really tired.
Motion is seconded. Mr. Friend?
Just as a point, if we do vote to postpone this, that we have to have police details back, we have a lot of costs, we got to bring town council back and so forth. So there's a lot of expense associated with going an extra night. Just be aware of that.
Is there any other discussion before we vote? Ms. Bass?
Yes, Sue Bass, Precinct 3. My understanding is that the residents of the Cushing Square area have reached agreement on this, and so that it's not likely to be extremely time-consuming. So I oppose, we don't know that, but we'll find out. But I oppose the postponement on those grounds.
So,
Yes. Says
yeah,
debatable.
perhaps if you could set a fixed amount of time, like if we deliberated to 10 more minutes and see if we could get to a vote in that time. And then if we don't, then just...
Yes.
This is not a debatable motion.
Thank you. Pardon. We will vote on it now. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Does not carry. Read the motion, Mr. Frenzy, please.
Angelo Ferenzi, town meeting member, Precinct 3, Article 20. As I read this is slightly different from the article that was originally submitted with your package. This article that is before you is the original motion that I'm reading now, and so it's a revision to the motion that you saw originally. But it is the main motion.
And it was available on, I may interrupt, it was available on Monday night.
It was also available on Monday night, so there's nothing new here that was not there. Move that the town discontinue a portion of Horn Road as a public way for all purposes for a distance of approximately 125 feet on the southerly side of the way and approximately 100 feet on the northerly side of the way, as shown as the discontinued section of Horn Road on a plan entitled Cushing Square, Belmont, Mass. 02478, compilation, thank you, plan dated March 3rd, 2008, made by R.J. O'Connell and Associates, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk subject to the reservation of pedestrian access in said way, and further authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase, gift, eminent domain, or otherwise a pedestrian access easement and a utility easement over the discontinued portion of Horn Road in a location and width to be determined by the Board of Selectmen, provided that the petitioner of the request to discontinue Horn Road shall provide satisfactory security to the Board of Selectmen identifying the town for all damages arising from said discontinuance as required under General Law, Chapter 82, Section 24, and further provided that said discontinuance shall become effective only upon the conveyance of the parcel of land identified as Lot 12, 211A, pursuant to the vote of town meeting under this Article 20.
We'll entertain discussion in a moment on both motions, even though we'll be doing them sequentially. The Warrant Committee, do you have a vote on this?
With respect to this motion, the Warrant Committee unanimously recommends favorable action.
And the Capital Budget Committee?
By a vote of 4-1, the Capital Budget Committee recommends favorable action.
And Mr.
Board of
Baghdadi?
Selectmen unanimously recommend favorable action.
And did the Planning Board vote on this? No. All right. Mr. Baghdadi, do you want to speak to this?
Yes. Sammy Baghdadi, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 4, and member of the Planning Board. Just to give you a report, what this motion does is this addresses the discontinuance of a portion of Horn Road to Common Street, specifically the area that's surrounded by the old CVS building, and then I think it's a cleaning establishment on the other side, on the corner. Very significantly, very significant, this vote would authorize the discontinuance of that portion of the street between 125 and 150 feet, but it would not take effect. It would not take effect unless, it would not be effective, the discontinuance, unless the parcel of land addressed by the next vote, namely the municipal parking lot on Trapello Road, is conveyed under the RFP process. So if the parking lot property does not get conveyed, this discontinuance of Horn Road does not become effective. You will see when the next motion is read by Mr. Ferenzi that there are also safeguards built in to that motion too. And the purpose of the safeguards is to allow the process to proceed before the Planning Board, to have public hearings, to allow neighbors and residents to review plans, make comments, work with any potential developer before a conveyance becomes effective.
Thank you. Mr. Frenzy, did you have?
Want to read the second one first or vote on this one first?
No, we're going to vote on this. So, Mr. Becker, did you? Is Mr. Becker here?
Good evening, and I'm glad I don't have to say good morning. In February of this year, residents of Horn Road, Williston Road, and Poplar Street formed the Cushing Square Neighborhood Association because we were concerned about the conceptual project design proposed under the Cushing Square Overlay District bylaw passed 2 years ago. In our opinion, the design was much too massive and was otherwise inconsistent with the letter and spirit of the bylaw. Last night, the Cushing Square Neighborhood Association met to discuss Article 20. We talked about how the provisions of this article will ensure that any project to be proposed and built under the bylaw will be consistent with the residential character of our neighborhood. In the end, we voted unanimously to support Article 20 because we believe that it creates an open and transparent process in which residents' concerns will be given priority consideration by the Planning Board during the site plan review process. We look forward to a collaborative process with the Planning Board, the Board of Selectmen, other town officials, and the developer to achieve a project design that will have an appropriate mass, that will maintain pedestrian access between our neighborhood and the square, that will prevent traffic from using our residential streets for access to and from the project, and that will otherwise successfully address our concerns in this, our town of homes. We wish to thank the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, the Warrant Committee, the Capital Budget Committee, the Town Moderator, and the Town Planner for their consideration and support as we work toward a project which will significantly improve the square and which will enhance the quality of the lives of all Belmont residents. We especially want to thank Sammy Baghdadi for his insight in crafting a document that will create a balanced process and that will lead to a revitalized Cushing Square that we can all enjoy and be proud of. If any residents of the surrounding neighborhoods would like to join the Cushing Square Neighborhood Association, please contact Devin Brown, Steve Carlini, or myself after this meeting. Thank you very much.
Mr. White.
I would like to see some sort of a diagram that shows me what's going to happen to my piece of property on that street. Who's going to own it when it's closed? Is it going to be owned by a private developer? Is it going to go out to an RFP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. You want to go?
Mr.
Well,
Baghdadi.
as a matter of law, okay, the town owns easements over roads. Okay, roads, the town owns easements to maintain roads for town purposes. So when a town discontinues a road, then it reverts to the center line to the owner of the land that abuts it. So in this case, the same individual that owns the CVS lot would also own the property on the other side of the road, so it would all revert to the same individual.
And he's going to pay us? Yes?
No. The discontinuance of the road, there is no
So in other
cost
words,
to
if you
that.
did this to any road, the person who lived in front of that or abutted that would automatically receive
Would own
half
to
of
the-
that,
own
and
to
the
the
abutter on
center
the other
line.
side would receive
Yes.
the other half.
Yes.
But could they build on it?
Yes, they would own it.
Okay.
I mean, subject to setback requirements, for example. You know, front yard requirements and.
It just seems we're losing a piece of real estate. We're giving it away.
We're giving up an easement, yes.
Mr. Friends?
There are conditions associated with that. We still maintain an easement for, for pedestrian passage. We still maintain easements like that. So he's got to provide and indemnify the town for all of
So
those
if they
situations.
chose to build on this, they would leave a 10-foot or 12-foot wide easement,
However-
a walkway through.
However it works out,
Okay.
whatever proposal they come back with, they can
I
do
think what I'm
that. They can have a
suggesting here
pass-through,
is
they
these
could-
people are going to build on a road that we traverse, inconvenience us, and they're going to reap profits from that, and we're not.
You could look at it that way.
Okay.
However,
Miss-
we're also going to be generating a tremendous amount of tax revenue so that we wouldn't be getting in return. So, I mean, that's a
Okay.
trade-off.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Singler.
Judy Singler, Precinct 6. Just a point of clarification first, and then I have a question. Is the Article 20, the one that we're voting on, the one on the piece of paper that has the conveyance, not the one that's in the warrant?
That's correct.
Correct?
That's correct.
Much as I appreciate what the gentleman from the Neighborhood Association is saying, he talks about how conveying this and voting in favor of this will promote a better neighborhood, better traffic, better patterns, all of this. That isn't exactly what's said here. We're basically trading a road for a parking lot, correct?
Mr.
The
Frenzy, do you want
conveyance
to
of the
respond to
property?
that question?
There's actually two parts to this motion, all right? One is the parking lot, all right, which we're required to go through an RFP proposal. We put together a proposal, we go out for bid or request for proposals and see what kind of response we get for developers. And in this particular case, the developer would pay for this parking lot, all right? Well, this is one we'd sell because it's something that we own. We don't own the road, we only own an easement on the road. And so, but there are two parts to this. We can vote in favor of one part, we can vote in favor of the other part. One is not tied to the other. The only way they're tied together is that we would not take the easement, we would not suspend the easement on Horn Road unless the parking lot was sold.
So you're trading the easement on the road for the parking lot?
No, we're selling the parking
You're
lot.
selling the parking lot, but that
The
is-
sale of the
but-
parking lot.
But that's the trade-off.
No,
It's-
no. We're not trading one for the other.
No, you're conveying both, but.
We're conveying
but the
both.
loss of one,
We're conveying both.
but the one is dependent upon the other.
They're
That's what
con-
I'm trying to say. The one is.
That's correct.
Is dependent upon
One is
the other.
conveyed, one is dependent on the other, but the other is not dependent on the first.
Because I have actually, I live in Precinct 6 and do a lot of business shopping in Cushing Square. And I've spoken with a number of business owners and people who live on the other side of the square who are extremely concerned about the closing off of Horn Road. the changes, the proposed development, the size of the development, and the fact of this coming up then so late. There's just
Okay.
a lot of loose ends that people don't understand.
And this is a very important point. The entire conveyance, and when we get into the parking lot, we'll be talking about that, is contingent on going through a planning board process and the issuing of a building permit. So all of these concerned residents, all of the concerned businesses, everybody will have an opportunity through a fully open meeting process, all right, planning board process, special permit process, to input all of that. So there's nothing, you know, if the developer doesn't get a permit, all right, through the planning board process, he would not get the parking lot. If he doesn't get the parking lot, he would not get the easement.
Ms. Scally?
Okay.
I've been a town meeting member since 1970, and I am appalled at 11:30 at night that we have to talk about this article, which is zoning, which affects a great deal of people in Cushing Square. Now, I have a few questions. One is you wouldn't let Rosemary Burke have her motion, and Angelo's telling us that last night they had a meeting, and I see first motion, second motion. Where has all that come from?
Those
I'm
motions.
very-
This
Ms. Scally,
motion
now
was...
let me answer that, please. Ms. Scally, this motion was presented to all of us, this revised motion on Monday night.
It was?
Nothing changed, and it was nothing changed since then in terms of this motion. What Mr. Becker was referring to was a meeting of his group that approved the essence of this motion. But, and the question of whether we should be discussing this or not, I left to town meeting.
I understand that, but it concerns me because some people who are adamantly against this went home an hour ago. And that's really sad.
Well,
That's really sad.
well, it may be sad, but I think that's their
Because
choice.
I watched the Warren Committee meeting, I've watched the Selectmen's meeting on television. The majority of them said no, and then tonight they're all saying they're all for it. Is this because of last night's meeting?
No, it had nothing to do with last night's meeting. Let me back up. The revised motions, the selectmen put the motions, they put the wording of the motions on the floor of town meeting, right?
I understand that.
We
Well,
were presented with these motions last Friday night, these revised motions.
Last
All right,
Friday night?
Last Friday night. They were presented to the board. I had a copy of this document last Friday night. Okay. The question then became, how did the residents feel about this document?
Yes, I remember
Right.
that.
As long as there was a tremendous amount of resident opposition, it was everybody's sense that they did not want to go forward with this if the residents objected.
Right.
The residents had a meeting last night, talked about this document, and decided that the wording in this document that was presented to us on last Friday night satisfied their position and their concerns, that their issues were being addressed. On that basis, once we got word that the residents were satisfied with this wording, all right, then the Warrant Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Capital Budget Committee all voted to approve it, where they would not have voted to approve it had there been resident opposition. The resident opposition was removed at a meeting last night, and therefore, we're going ahead on this.
So everything changed.
So everything changed.
That's it, okay. But in future years, I would really hate to see important issues like this being talked about at the end of town meeting. Please find time to have them in a more presentable time when the majority of us are still here.
Well, maybe we could have gone earlier and not spent as much time talking about some of the other things. I mean, you know,
All right, let's continue. The gentleman there.
David Webster, Precinct 4. I appreciate the work, obviously, by a lot of different committees and the residents to kind of get through a delicate situation here that it looked like to avoid both a roadblock and open up a collaborative process. I'm a little confused, and maybe you can clarify the scenarios of voting yes on one and no on the other, and the order of that. It seems like if we discontinue Horn Road, that's done, then we've given up the road before we really know anything else about the process. I mean, because we are voting to do that. So maybe you can just clarify the scenarios of what order and if one passes or another one doesn't.
All right.
Well, we don't need to read. What I had said, when to clarify the gentleman's question, I explained at the beginning, we're talking about, we haven't read the second motion, but we're obviously talking about both together. Mr. Baghdadi, can you clarify the the gentleman's question.
Yes. Let me explain the second motion, even though it hasn't been read yet, okay? What the second motion deals with is the conveyance of the municipal parking lot property, okay? And that conveyance is specifically conditioned on several conditions. Number one, the town getting a replacement for the 50 parking spaces, municipal parking spaces that would be lost elsewhere within the square. Number two, any project on the property would be subject to site design and site plan review before the planning board for any improvement of that land. Three, issuance of all special permits required of the planning board for the development of that land. And four, the expiration of all appeal periods. Now, let me explain the significance of that. Under the motions that are printed in the warrant, what would have happened is, if it was approved, the parcel would have gone through an RFP, request for proposals, bids would have been made, a bid would have been awarded, the parcel would have been conveyed to a potential developer, and then the developer would have submitted an application to the planning board for their development of that parcel. I think that created a lot of anxiety among boards and residents because nobody knew what was going to go on that property before it was conveyed to a potential developer. What the new motion does is it changes that whole process, and what it says is, if this is approved at town meeting, then the selectmen can issue an RFP, they can accept bids, they can award a bid, enter into a purchase and sale agreement with a potential developer, but it would be subject to the developer getting all their permits and approvals before the sale becomes effective. So everybody would be able to see the final plans, to meet, attend public hearings before the planning board, deliberate on this, give their input, and then once the planning board issues its permits, after they can no longer be appealed. You know, there was a concern that we may impose conditions, the developer may not like them. You know, he gets a special permit, goes through a conveyance, and then appeals. Okay, that's why past appeal periods, and then the conveyance would become effective. Now, once the conveyance of the parking lot becomes effective, then the discontinuance of Horn Road automatically becomes effective. So if the parking lot conveyance, if for some reason the developer cannot get their permits, their final permits for development of the parking lot, then the discontinuance of Horn Road would not be effective. What's it do? Relieves all anxiety. We all know what's going to happen on that block, that most important project for Belmont, before the conveyance and the discontinuance of the road takes effect. And I think that's why the neighbors are in support of this motion. I hope I clarified it.
The woman here, please.
Yeah, there's just let me,
can
one slight addition. It was never the intention of the Board of Selectmen to convey this property, even in the original motion, the way it was originally meant. It wasn't specified specifically in the motion, but it was never the intention of the Board of Selectmen to convey this property unless there were specific approved plans. All right. All this does is specifically specify it. All right? It was left for interpretation without it being specified. So now all this does is specify it. It did not change what the board would have done. It just specified what the board was, what the board had to do.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. The woman.
Mary Gavin, Town Meeting, Precinct 1. I have a question relative to the definition of public parking. If the
That's the second motion, right?
well, you brought it up.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
I would like a definition of public parking. I think public parking, it leaves a lot to be desired in what I would presume the definition to be. If I go downtown and I am required to park in a public parking space and pay $30 for the evening to go out, that's my choice. What guarantees do we have that public parking won't be determined in Belmont, if you want to go to Belmont Center to Cushing Square, to some fancy new restaurant or whatever, that might be cheaper in Belmont to take a cab than to drive from your home to the center.
Mr. Baghdadi, do you want to respond?
I think,
Well, all right,
I think
Mr. Franzi,
public parking, we as a town can decide whether you're going to have parking meters or not have parking meters, or we could wake up one morning and decide we want to spend $30 to park in Belmont Center. That's our prerogative. Public parking means that the town controls how much money we get, if any, for the parking. It's not a developer. If, in fact, this ends up as a parking garage or there are parking spaces within a garage, the developer will be required to provide spaces to Belmont for Belmont to control however they choose to do so, all right, up to the tune, and this is a point of negotiation. We're putting in here it's got to be at least 50. I think personally, I think it should be more than 50. All right, so that's something that we'll be going through as part of the process, part of the negotiating process. But we can't start that negotiating process until we have the right to sell a property.
Okay.
Right. And that's what we're looking for: is the right to go out for RFP, the right to start this process, the right to start this dialogue with the developer. To see what his ideas are, for him to be able to put together a package that he can present to the planning board, that the residents of the community can then give their inputs on, and the planning board can put the appropriate orders and conditions on whatever gets developed there.
I asked this question because the town meeting gave the Board of Selectmen permission to sell town real property with conditions that we thought were being held to. And then we come back to the town meeting, this town meeting, and are told that 3 votes that we took in the past, 1 by the town and 2 by the town meeting, were false. Basically, because of the change of the technicality, the transfer of the money to the senior center project.
No, that's totally wrong.
That's what my neighbors think we've done. And so I'm just asking this question, and if you don't like that, I might appear a little bit tired, but at 11:45, we've already broken all the rules that were set, that the town meeting would end at 11, that this was going to be a brand-new town meeting, we're going to run it correctly, and here we are at 11:45. So, you can't have it one way and be questioned and don't like being questioned.
I'll stay here all night. I'll stay here all night if you wish. All right?
We should be doing this on Monday night.
But what you're saying is not true, okay? It's
Can
not
we
true.
move on,
I'm just telling you it's the perception.
It may be what you represent, but it's not.
Can I hear from the
gentleman? It's not true.
Okay. Can we move on, please? Ms. Schaefer, sure.
Bellevue Schaefer, Precinct 7. A question, a clarification. Is there anything in what we're voting tonight on, in terms of the conveyance of the easement and that requires that the parking lot be bought by the man who, or the group who owns the abutting sites on the road?
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be bought. It could be leased. That's part of the negotiating process.
No, that's my point. Does it have to be that entity? Could a third party come in and say...
A third party could absolutely come in and respond to the RFP. There's no guarantee that the developer would be the winning bidder.
Okay,
There is no bidder. However, there is no guarantee that the developer would be the winning bidder. However, if somebody else would come in and develop the parking lot, all right, we would still be forced to convey.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying, is that conveyance could take place and would take place even if somebody else came in.
There is absolutely no guarantee that that any one developer would be the successful bidder.
Okay, so it really will be an open RFP process. This is not...
It would be an open RFP process, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
This gentleman.
Hi, Kevin Cunningham, Precinct 4. I'm just going to explain an impression I have and just get feedback on it, because I'm not aware of that much of the who owns what in Cushing Square, and I came to the meeting and I saw a motion in the warrant and stuff, and it seemed to imply that there was something going on behind it to have it be expedited. And even the fact that we're meeting now makes it seem like something wants to move, somebody wants to have it happen. There's some kind of I don't want to say pressure, but I don't feel like that's part of the discussion here, so I don't know what any intentions. Is the developer here? Can there be any, have anything been put forward as a project idea? I just want to know what's behind this. It's very odd to have a vote on a street, on blocking off a street, if we don't know anything that's going to happen. It sounds like there's something's been floated, and it's not part of this conversation.
That was something, what was
Frenzy,
floated.
identify yourself, please.
Angela Ferenzi, town meeting member, Precinct 3. What we're talking about is consistent with what we voted on 2 years ago when we created the overlay district. We created an overlay district that went from Belmont Street, down Common Street, down Trapello Road, including the parking lot, and including that section of Horn Road that we're talking about.
aware of
All right,
that,
that was the overlay district that we voted on. All right. There is a developer that has been acquiring, started owning some of the land, that has acquired most of those parcels of land that are in that district now. He is the owner of the CVS building. He is the owner of the building that includes the bank and the laundromat. He is the owner of the empty lot. He is the owner of the corner building, and I believe he is also the owner of the Starbucks building.
I guess
Okay.
my impression of that meeting two years ago, in which I voted for it, I seem to recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was some sense of the scope of the kind of building that was likely to be created, and it sounds like if someone has all the property, are they now able to build some mega complex?
No, the terms of what he can build are still being dictated by the overlay district that we all voted on.
Well, I understand that
Okay, so he can't build.
to the overlay.
He is subject to the overlay. He is either subject to the overlay or he's subject to the underlying zoning that's there.
Right, that's what I'm
That's
saying.
right. So he can't come in and say, okay, I don't like the overlay, I'm going to put a 6-story, an 8-story, or a 10-story building there.
I want to, excuse me.
No, we can't do that. No.
Excuse me.
No.
I'm going to entertain the moderator's prerogative here. I'm concerned, let me be perfectly frank, we voted and closely voted to try to do this article tonight. I'm concerned about, obviously, the lateness of the hour, and I'm concerned that in the frustration and whatnot that we won't take full considered action on this article tonight. I hate to bring us back Monday, but I think it may be worse to continue under this environment. So I would entertain again and see, this is a very important issue. And given the level, I guess I'll say this, given the level of confusion and concern versus if there had been broad unanimity and understanding of this, we could have done it in a brief time, but given the level of concern and confusion, I am concerned about doing it at this late hour without having a proper airing of the issues and having the town meeting feel that there's a full discussion. So that's my concern, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn and then see if the town meeting wants to do that.
Mr. Moderator?
Or comment, yes, Mr. Cohen. Did you?
I move that we adjourn this town meeting till Monday next at 7:30 at this place.
I move the question.
The problem I have, I'll entertain the motion to adjourn. The problem I have as moderator, and my concern here is that in moving the question, and with a...
The neighbors have spoken. This is who we're supposed to be listening to, the neighbors.
The motion to adjourn is not debatable. It's been made and seconded. And the motion to adjourn to, I believe you said, Mr. Cohen, to Monday at 7:30 at this place. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Doubt the vote? Motion to adjourn? No, we just... Meeting adjourned.